The final moments of Pope John Paul II were not just a farewell. They were a silent prophecy, a living map intertwined with the secrets of Fatima. We're not just talking about a pope. We're talking about a man who carried the wounds of an entire era in his own flesh, who loved the Church to the point of offering himself completely. And in his last Easter, through silence more powerful than words, he left us a message, a warning, a guide about the battle we are living today. What did he see? What did he know? And why is the world only now beginning to understand it? Stay with us. The prophecy is unfolding before our very eyes. In Pope John Paul II's very last moment. The spring of 2005, Catholics around the world kept eyes on the Vatican with heavy hearts. During the final weeks of Lent, the world stood watching by the bedside of a great pope who was clearly entering the final stage of his earthly life. After a long decline with Parkinson's disease, on February 24th, Pope John Paul II was taken to the Agostina Gemelli Hospital with acute respiratory failure. The doctors performed a tracheotomy. After an 18-day stay in the hospital, the doctors wanted to keep him there, but he insisted on returning to the Vatican. The Pope wanted to die at home, just a few hundred yards from the site of St. Peter's martyrdom and tomb. As he was transported back to the papal apartment, the crowds watching across the world saw a frail and failing pope and knew that he could not go on much longer. Nevertheless, on March 20th, he appeared for the Palm Sunday liturgy but could barely hold a palm branch. On Good Friday, he followed the traditional way of the cross at the Colosseum at home in front of the television. He was pictured in a purple stole, clutching a cross. It was as if, in this final Holy Week of his life, he was walking with Christ in his own terminal suffering. On Easter Day, he made his final public appearance. Unable to speak, and clearly in distress, he gave the crowds his Easter blessing. His health continued to decline during the following week. On Saturday evening at 8 p.m., the Mass for Divine Mercy Sunday was celebrated in his room by Archbishop Stanislaw Dziwisz and a group of Polish priests. The Pope received communion and the last rites of the Church. Finally, later that evening, Cardinal Sandri announced to the crowds keeping vigil, "Dear brothers and sisters, at 9:37 p.m., our beloved Holy Father John Paul II returned to the house of the Father. Let us pray for him." For the next 5 days, pilgrims flooded into Rome from around the world. Every means of transportation from Poland was packed. Hundreds of thousands filled St. Peter's Square, standing silently in lines to pay their respects to the Pope who had changed the world. His funeral on April 8th was thought to be the largest funeral in history. Heads of state joined with the tens of thousands in the square and millions more watching on television around the world. Pope John Paul II lived out in the final days of his life a mystical configuration with Christ his Lord. In his final days, the world watched him walk his own way of the cross, live through a final Easter only to go home to the Father's house, the Father of all mercies on the eve of the feast of the Divine Mercy, the great feast he championed. In doing so, he showed the world not only the way to live, but the way to die, walking with Christ through death to the final triumph of life and mercy. The Pope of the Virgin Mary. John Paul II was the Pope of the Rosary, the Pope of the Virgin Mary, the Pope who consecrated the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, the Pope who survived an assassination attempt on May 13, 1981, the day of Our Lady's apparition in Fatima. On that fate day, Pope John Paul II was shot 4 times in St. Peter's Square. One of the bullets missed his heart by inches, but he survived. Considering not only his survival but also his sufferings as providential, the Pope said that one hand pulled the trigger and another guided the bullet, and credited Our Lady of Fatima with protecting him from death. He had the bullet that struck closest to his heart hammered into the crown that adorns the statue of Our Lady of Fatima in Portugal. In 1984, Pope John Paul II issued his apostolic letter, Salvifici Doloris, in which he explores all human suffering as a sharing in the sufferings of Christ, writing that those who share in the sufferings of Christ preserve in their own sufferings a very special particle of the infinite treasure of the world's redemption, and can share this treasure with others. On May 14, 2006, the 25th anniversary of the attack, Pope Benedict XVI recalled the event and stated, John Paul II felt that he had been miraculously saved from death by the intervention of a maternal hand, as he said, and his entire pontificate was marked by what the Virgin had announced in Fatima. In the end, my immaculate heart will triumph. Furthermore, this attack has been attributed to the third secret of Fatima, where the Virgin revealed to the shepherd children Lucia, Jacinta, and Francisco that the Holy Father, on his knees at the foot of the cross, was killed by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. On the other hand, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith has interpreted this secret as the suffering of humanity before the world wars, the persecution of the Church, including the attempted assassination of John Paul II, the sacrifices of the martyrs, penance, the call to conversion, and the hope of salvation. The letter to the last Fatima visionary. In 2005, just days before the Pope's death, Sister Lucia, the last Fatima visionary, passed away. The day before her passing, Sister Lucia, the Fatima visionary, received a message from Pope John Paul II. Bishop Cleto, who was at Sister Lucia's side together with her Carmelite sisters during the final moments of her life, said, Sister Lucia read the Holy Father's message in which he encouraged her to pray in order to be able to live this moment of pain, suffering, and offering with the spirit of Easter. Sister Lucia was the last surviving witness of the apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima, which took place beginning on May 13, 1917. She died at the age of 97 and was laid to rest at the Carmelite monastery where she lived. Then, her remains will be transported to the shrine of Fatima. At the funeral of Sister Lucia, Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone, Archbishop of Genoa, Italy, presided at the funeral mass as the Pope's special envoy and read the message from Pope John Paul II to Sister Lucia. The Pope wrote, For Lucia, the visit by the Virgin to her and to her cousins Francesco and Jacinta at Fatima in 1917 was the beginning of a special mission to which she remained faithful to the end of her days. Sister Lucia leaves us an example of great faithfulness to the Lord and of joyous obedience to His divine will. The Holy Father recalled with emotion his various meetings with Sister Lucia and the ties of spiritual friendship which strengthened over time. I felt myself supported by the daily gift of her prayers, especially during difficult moments of trial and suffering. May the Lord give her ample reward for the great and hidden service she offered the Church. I like to think that Sister Lucia, in her transit from earth to heaven, was welcomed by the one whom she saw at Fatima so many years ago. May the Most Holy Virgin now accompany the soul of this devoted daughter to the beatific encounter with the divine bridegroom. Pope John Paul II met Sister Lucia, a Carmelite nun, on 3 occasions, on May 13th in the years 1982, 1991, and 2000. The first encounter took place exactly a year after the attempt on the Pope's life in St. Peter's Square, in which he almost died. On that occasion, the Pope went to Fatima to give thanks to the Virgin Mary for saving him, and ordered that, as a sign of gratitude, the bullet found in his jeep after the assassination attempt be set in the crown of the image of the Virgin of Fatima. The second meeting, in 1991, took place on the 10th anniversary of the assassination attempt. The last occasion on which the Pope and Sister Lucia met personally was on May 13, 2000, when the Holy Father beatified her cousins, the shepherd children Francisco and Jacinta, and Cardinal Secretary of State Angelo Sodano read a message concerning the third secret of Fatima, the promised miracle that thousands gathered to see. The children were tending a flock of sheep outside the tiny village of Fatima, Portugal, when they first saw the angel. He was transparent, they said, and shining like a crystal. Lucia Abobora and her cousins, Jacinta and Francisco Marto, were stunned. He said, "Do not be afraid. I am the angel of peace. Pray with me." Abobora, later renamed Lucia de Jesus de dos Santos, recounted in her memoir, Fatima in Lucia's own words, published in 1976. During the rest of 1916, as World War I raged in Europe, the angel showed himself 2 more times to the children, but they told no one what they'd seen. In the spring of 1917, something more extraordinary began unfolding. Visions that would put 3 children on the path to sainthood and transform Fatima from an ordinary village to the site of a Catholic shrine venerated and visited by millions. The Virgin Mary appeared to the children on May 13, 1917, as a lady dressed in white, shining brighter than the sun, giving out rays of clear and intense light, Dos Santos wrote. She promised to come to the children on the 13th of each month. Jacinta told her mother about it. While her siblings joked about the apparition, her alarmed mother hauled her in front of their parish priest to recant. She would not. News of the visions spread by word of mouth, and the following month, a small crowd waited with the children to witness the second apparition, June 13th. At the third sighting, on July 13th, the children said the Virgin Mary revealed 3 secrets to them about the future. Interest in what was happening in Fatima grew more intense. On August 13th, the children were taken into custody by a state bureaucrat, who took them by car to Vila Nova de Orem in hopes of getting them to recant their testimonies. Again, they would not. Thousands of people began streaming to Cova de Iria, the site of the Virgin Mary apparitions. On September 13th, 30,000 people were present when Dos Santos said the Virgin Mary told her, "In October, I will perform a miracle so that all may believe." On that day, October 13th, 1917, the crowd of believers had swelled to 70,000. About 2 p.m., some began to see what later became known in the Catholic Church as the miracle of the sun. The rains that had plagued the day ceased, and the sun emerged from behind clouds to spin and tremble for 10 minutes. Before the astonished eyes of the crowd, whose aspect was biblical as they stood bareheaded, eagerly searching the sky, the sun trembled, made sudden incredible movements outside all cosmic laws. The sun danced, according to the typical expression of the people. The strange phenomena included odd colors. Looking at the sun, I noticed that everything was becoming darkened. I looked first at the nearest objects and then extended my glance further afield as far as the horizon. I saw everything had assumed an amethyst color. Objects around me, the sky and the atmosphere, were of the same color. Everything both near and far had changed, taking on the color of old yellow damask, said José Maria de Almeida Garrett, a science professor from Coimbra, Portugal, who was at the scene. Onlookers from as far as 25 miles away noted the strange phenomena in the sky. There were scientific reasons put forth for what had happened. Perhaps the witnesses had stared at the sun too long. Perhaps it was a combination of optical effects and a real meteorological shift caused by the weather and the cloud cover. But the miracle was acknowledged as worthy of belief by the Catholic Church in 1930. By then, Jacinta and Francisco Marto had both died of the flu, which had hit Fatima shortly after the visions. Dos Santos, who told of seeing one more vision of the Virgin Mary in 1920, dedicated her life to God and became a Carmelite nun. On May 14, 2000, Cardinal Angelo Sodano disclosed the third of the 3 secrets, the only one that still remained a mystery. The first was a vision of World War I ending and World War II beginning, and the second was the rise and fall of Soviet communism. But the third, the cardinal said, was a vision of a bishop in white falling to the ground under a hail of gunfire. This was interpreted by the Church as a foretelling of the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II's life in 1981. The Pope credited the Virgin Mary of Fatima with saving his life. The same year as this revelation, Jacinta and Francisco Marto became the youngest children beatified, the first step to being canonized, by the Roman Catholic Church, who did not die as martyrs. Fatima reminders from Sister Lucia. Little did Sister Lucia realize that she also shared major insights with important Fatima-grounded guidance in her books and some letters. As worries about today's times multiply, she would say now what she did then to the troubled society she already saw on the horizon. In the memorable moment of our Blessed Mother's first appearance to the 3 children at Fatima, let's look at 13 of Sister Lucia's many insights, counsels, advice, and warnings. On another 13th, April 13th, 1971, Sister Lucia went right to the point, writing her nephew, Father José dos Santos Valinhor, a Salesian superior in Portugal. It is indeed sad that so many are allowing themselves to be dominated by the diabolical wave that is enveloping the world, and they are so blind that they cannot see the error. The principal error is that they have abandoned prayer, and thus they have gone away from God, and without God, everything is lacking in them. Without me, you can do nothing. What Sister Lucia recommends to us above all else is that you get close to the tabernacle and pray. In this, you will find the light, the strength, and the grace that you need to sustain you, and that you can pass on to others. Guide them with humility, with gentleness, and, at the same time, guide them with firmness, always with serenity, justice, and charity. Never think of the time you spend in prayer as lost. You will see that in prayer God will communicate to you the light and the grace that you need to do all that He requires of you. Truth does not cease to exist simply because unbelievers deny it. What was true yesterday remains true today and will still be true tomorrow, because Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. In times such as the present, when the family often seems misunderstood in the form in which it was established by God, and is assailed by doctrines that are erroneous and contrary to the purposes for which the divine Creator instituted it, surely God wished to address to us a reminder of the purpose for which He established the family in the world. God entrusted to the family the sacred mission of cooperating with Him in the work of creation. This decision to associate His poor creatures with His creative work is a great demonstration of the fatherly goodness of God. It is as if He were making them share in His creative power, making use of His children in order to bring forth new lives which will flower on earth but be destined for heaven. Jesus also said, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves." These false prophets are all those people surrounding us, trying to induce us to follow the wide road, to give free rein to our evil tendencies, caprices, vices, and disordered passions, all of which are contrary to God's law. They are the bad company that turns us aside from the right path of truth, justice, and charity. They are all those false prophets who deny the truths revealed by God, endeavoring to introduce new and erroneous doctrines in support of the disordered lives that they themselves wish to lead. The Lord gives us a rule by which to identify such people. You will know them by their fruits. Every sound tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears evil fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus you will know them by their fruits. These warnings must put us on our guard against ourselves and the maxims of the world around us. The only important thing for us is to do the will of God, be where He wants us to be, and do what He expects of us, always with the spirit of humility, conscious of the fact that we are nothing and that it is God who works through us and makes use of us to accomplish His work. In carrying out our everyday tasks, we must endeavor to be aware of God's presence. Call to mind that God and our angel guardian are close to us, see what we are doing, and in what frame of mind we are doing it. Hence, we must sanctify our work, our rest, our meals, our wholesome entertainment, as if they were an ongoing prayer. Knowing that God is present, it is enough to call Him to mind and from time to time say a few words to Him. I bless you, Lord, for your greatness and your goodness, for your wisdom, for your power, for your mercy, for your justice, for your love. This intimate and familiar converse with God transforms our work and our daily occupations into a true and abiding life of prayer, making us more pleasing to God and bringing down upon us extra special graces and blessings. All we have to do is to follow this word of life with faith. To follow it with faith, and also with the simplicity of a child, which, aware of its own helplessness, abandons itself in the arms of its father, where it rests and sleeps securely because it knows that its father will carry it safely, protect it, and lay it down to rest. And if it should happen to offend its father by disobeying one of his commands, it knows its father's heart and trusts in his love, and so runs to meet him, confessing its fault, confident of his forgiveness, and with the same confidence as before, throws itself into his arms. In God's eyes, we are all children. He is the father of the great human family. He rocks us all in the cradle of his providence and leads us all in the ways of love. Like children in their father's arms, confident of his infinite mercy, we shall know that our confidence will not be misplaced. The work of our redemption began at the moment when the Word descended from heaven in order to assume a human body in the womb of Mary. From that moment, and for the next 9 months, the blood of Christ was the blood of Mary, taken from her immaculate heart. The heart of Christ was beating in unison with the heart of Mary. And we can think that the aspirations of the heart of Mary were completely identified with the aspirations of the heart of Christ. Since we all need to pray, God asks of us, as a kind of daily installment, a prayer which is within our reach, the Rosary, which can be recited either in common or in private, either in church in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, or at home, either when traveling or while walking quietly in the fields. A mother of a family can say the Rosary while she rocks her baby's cradle or does the housework. Our day has 24 hours in it. It is not asking a great deal to set aside a quarter of an hour for the spiritual life, for our intimate and familiar converse with God. I believe that after the liturgical prayer of the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass, the praying of the Rosary, in view of the origin and the sublime nature of the prayers used in it, of the mysteries of the redemption which we call, and on which we meditate during each decade, is the most pleasing prayer we can offer to God, and one which is most advantageous to our own souls. If such were not the case, Our Lady would not have asked for it so insistently. Hence, in the message of Fatima, God calls on us to turn our eyes to the Holy Family of Nazareth, into which He chose to be born, and to grow in grace and stature, in order to present to us a model to imitate, as our footsteps tread the path of our pilgrimage to heaven. The Fatima's loyal scribe. When Our Lady of Fatima appeared June 13, 1917, to the 3 children, she specifically told 10-year-old Lucia dos Santos, "I want you to learn to read and write, and later I will tell you what else I want of you." At that time, little did Lucia realize that after she became a Dorothian sister and then a Carmelite, she would develop into a prolific writer. Lucia's major work in her lifetime began with the first of 4 memoirs or reminiscences, when she was ordered by Bishop José Alves Correia da Silva of Leiria to write down what she remembered about Jacinta. In the Dorothean convent, Lucia had received photos of her cousin taken when Jacinta's remains were moved from Villanova de Urem to Fatima and her casket opened. In a letter in 1935, in thanks for the photos, she wrote, "I was half in the clouds, such was my joy at seeing again my closest childhood friend. I have hopes that our Lord, for the glory of the Most Holy Virgin, will grant her the crown of sanctity. She was a child only in years, As for the rest, she knew how to practice virtue and to show God and the Most Holy Virgin her love through the practice of sacrifice. It is to her companionship that I owe, in part, the conservation of my innocence. When the bishop saw this remembrance, he made his request for her to write more. Lucia wrote back that she would take up the work in spite of the repugnance I feel, but I obey nevertheless the will of your excellency, which for me is the expression of the will of our good God. I begin this task then, asking the most holy hearts of Jesus and Mary to deign to bless it, and to make use of this act of obedience to obtain the conversion of poor sinners, for whom Jacinta so generously sacrificed herself. Thinking of her limitations, she added, I know that your excellency does not expect that I write skillfully, because you know my incapacity and insufficiency. Lucia did not realize her natural gift for bringing the truth to life simply, and for painting vivid work pictures in all truth, sincerity, and honesty. With the eye of an artist, she described her humble home in orderly and precise detail, taking readers through it with word photos. Less than 2 weeks after Lucia began the initial memoir, on Christmas Day 1935, she finished it. At the time, it was titled simply Jacinta. Shortly after, a priest working with the bishop suggested he ask Lucia to expand on the history and details of the apparitions. So the bishop shared the request. Lucia started writing more on November 7, 1937, completing the second memoir on November 21st. Included are the recounting of the apparitions of the angels and the revelation of the Immaculate Heart of Mary in the June apparition, plus several other details. With Fatima's Silver Jubilee in 1942 on the horizon, again the bishop wanted her to write further. This expanded version of what was then known as Jacinta would be the third memoir in time for the Jubilee anniversary. Lucia realized this was the time in this requested third memoir to reveal the first and second secrets of Fatima. Lucia wrote the bishop that, in obedience to his order, the moment has arrived to reply to 2 questions which have often been sent to me, but which I have put off answering until now. In my opinion, it would be pleasing to God and to the Immaculate Heart of Mary that, in the book Jacinta, 1 chapter would be devoted to the subject of hell and another to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Your Excellency will indeed find this opinion rather strange and perhaps inopportune, but it is not my own idea. God Himself will make clear to you that this is a matter that pertains to His glory and to the good of souls. These updates were written in the summer of 1941. After Lucia completed the text, the bishop and a priest working closely on Fatima with him visited her on the Feast of the Holy Rosary on October 7, 1941, and wanted to know even more. She wrote in 2 parts, turning in the first part on November 5th and the second completed edition on December 8th, the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception. Lucia has sketched out a kind of message of Fatima according to the Gospel, or a Gospel according to Fatima, in line with Pope St. John Paul II's words on Fatima, noted Carmelite Father Jesus Castellano Cervera, about calls from the message of Fatima. Like millions of others, most of us had often wondered about the contents of the third secret of Fatima, which is more properly termed the third part of the secret of Fatima. When the Holy See released the text of the 83-year-old third secret on 2000, Christians over the world weren't the only surprised at its contents. Those who read the third secret of Fatima, except for the Vatican hierarchy, say that what it contained is much more than what the Vatican revealed in 2000. But has the third secret truly been fully revealed? Or is there still a mysterious truth hidden behind it? Could it be that what the Vatican disclosed is only a shadow of the real secret? Father Malachi Martin, the one who had direct access to this secret, now revealed the shocking truth was hid under the third secret of Fatima. What you have seen is not the truth. There has been so much controversy on the supposed third secret of Fatima from that 1917 Marian apparition in Portugal, when about 70,000 people, including atheists, witnessed the stupendous miracle of the dancing sun. The Vatican had released the alleged full text of the third secret with a 40-page commentary by then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later to become Pope Benedict XVI, and an introduction by Archbishop Tarcisio Bertone. The document was released through the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. The document noted that Pope John XXIII read the third secret in August 1959, but decided not to publicize it. Pope Paul VI made the same decision in March 1965. Soon after the attempt on his life on May 13, 1981, Pope John Paul II reread the secret and decided to consecrate the world to the Virgin Mary on June 7, 1981. Lone surviving Fatima visionary sister Lucia dos Santos allegedly confirmed that this consecration fulfilled the wishes of the Lady of Fatima. John Paul II's decision to make public the third Fatima secret brings to an end a period of history marked by tragic human lust for power and evil, yet pervaded by the merciful love of God and the watchful care of the Mother of Jesus and of the Church. However, the controversy over whether what was revealed contained the full text of the third secret has haunted the Christian world. Sister Lucia, who was already then a Carmelite nun, wrote down the text of the third secret in 1944 at the request of the local bishop. She wrote, "After the two parts which I have already explained, at the left of Our Lady and a little above, we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, it gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire. But they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, 'Penance, penance, penance.' Still, some totally believe that what the Vatican had revealed was not the full third secret story. Howard D., former Philippine ambassador to the Vatican, said in a 1998 interview with Inside the Vatican magazine, Bishop Ito was certain Akita apparitions of the Blessed Mother in the early 1970s was an extension of Fatima, and that Ratzinger had personally confirmed to me that these two messages of Fatima and Akita are essentially the same. D was referring to the apparitions of the Blessed Mother in Akita, Japan, to Sister Agnes Sasagawa. There, the Blessed Mother said, "As I told you, if men do not repent and better themselves, the Father will inflict a terrible punishment on all humanity. It will be a punishment greater than the deluge, such as one will never seen before. Fire will fall from the sky and will wipe out a great part of humanity, the good as well as the bad, sparing neither priests nor faithful. The work of the devil will infiltrate even into the church in such a way that one will see cardinals opposing cardinals, bishops against bishops. The priests who venerate me will be scorned and opposed by their confreres, churches and altars sacked. The church will be full of those who accept compromises, and the demon will press many priests and consecrated souls to leave the service of the Lord." Of course, the first two Fatima secrets are already well known to Our Lady of Fatima devotees, namely the vision of hell and the prophecy on the end of World War I, the beginning of World War II, and the request for the consecration of Russia to her Immaculate Heart. And so the controversy on the third secret boils on. In May 1994, 77 years after Fatima, a French priest named Frantre Raymond Arnett was listening to a CD entitled Mysterium Fidei, with French lyrics and sung by French choirs, and then suddenly heard a clear voice saying, "The church will bleed from all her wounds." The voice went on to say, "There will be a wicked council planned and prepared that will change the countenance of the church. Many will lose their faith. Confusion will reign everywhere. The sheep will search for their shepherds in vain." A schism will tear apart the holy tunic of my son. This will be the end of times, foretold in the Holy Scriptures and recalled to memory by me in many places. The abomination of abominations will reach its peak, and it will bring the chastisement announced at La Salette. My son's arm, which I will not be able to hold back anymore, will punish this poor world, which must expiate its crimes, the voice said. It continued, one will only speak about wars and revolutions. The elements of nature will be unchained and will cause anguish even among the best. The church will bleed from all her wounds. Happy are they who will persevere and search for refuge in my heart, because in the end, my immaculate heart will triumph. Then Father Arnett only heard one more sentence. This is the third secret of Fatima. The secret was kept for a while. Father Malachi remembered that some showed him a copy of the third secret when Pope John XXIII opened in 1960 and asked the opinion of a group of cardinals. One of them was Cardinal Augustine B. There was a theory that the third secret is about apostasy in the church. This hypothesis was based on the few data dispersed in Fatima, which came to be known during the years of spiritual hunger in the 70s and 80s. The third secret provides for a punishment of a spiritual nature. Speaking of this theory, Father Malachi replied, apostasy in the church forms the background or context of the third secret. Apostasy now begins. But the punishment envisaged for the secret is very real. Physical punishment is, and they are terrible. Before reading the secret, he was asked to take an oath not to reveal, but he thought it should have been revealed, and that our Lord and Our Lady wanted it to be known. So he mentioned the third secret whenever he could. He spoke around him, giving maximum information about him, as well as the maximum number of tracks on him, without actually revealing the text. Then, very quickly, he cited a list of possible calamities and said that some of them were in the secret. Although the list included things like World War III, the Pope's death, and the 3 days of darkness, it was not particularly instructive because not all of the punishments were on the list, and not everything that was listed was part of the punishment. The spiritual punishment apparently started shortly after 1960 and resulted in the Holy Father's refusal. Father Martin said, "Cardinals, bishops, and priests are falling like leaves in hell." Martins warned us about the dark future when faith disappears in several countries and continents. Many of the elect will lose their faith. Things will be so bad that, if Our Lady does not intervene, no one will be saved. God will withdraw grace. Father Malachi told us that apostasy in the church was the background or context of the third secret, but he also said that this spiritual punishment was part of the punishment that God would inflict if Our Lady's orders were not obeyed. In this regard, he said a disturbing thing several times. God will withdraw grace. This seems to be a very difficult thing for God, such as sabotaging his own will, that all men be saved and come to the full knowledge of the truth. Satan will gain power in the upper echelons of the church. Another part of the spiritual punishment that he mentioned several times was, Satan wants to gain power, even in the highest echelons of the church. The last pope will be under the control of Satan. Father Martin replied that this man would have a means of reading, or that he had been given the contents of the secret. However, he said that the quote was inaccurate, and that is because no one was authorized to quote the secret exactly. However, while the quote, "the last pope will be under Satan's control," is accurate, Father Martin changed the last two main components of that sentence. The last pope, he said, does not necessarily mean the last pope before the end of time, but the last pope of these times, and after the words, "under the control of Satan," it can have several meanings. Father Martin used to explain when talking about exorcisms and demonic activities, there are several ways in which Satan can control a human being, partially or totally. The person may have sold the soul to the devil in exchange for a favor, or Satan can control these people and circumstances surrounding that person. Pope Benedict's lament to several visitors in his papal office, "My authority ends after that door," raises the question of how far has the Church achieved this status? We can see that spiritual punishment has been on the increase since 1960. This terrible punishment does not come without warning, he said, but only those who have been renewed in their hearts, and will probably be a minority, will recognize him for what he is and prepare for the tribulations that will follow. The best-kept secret of the 20th century. Secrecy breeds speculation, and much speculation was made as to the content of this third secret. Some declarations made by Lucia complaining that the Holy Father had not made the consecration to Mary requested by the Blessed Virgin led some to think that the third secret contained apocalyptic predictions that the popes preferred to reserve to themselves in order to avoid panic. After the accident, Pope John Paul II began to turn around his person. He became the Pope of Fatima, even making a pilgrimage to the site and placing the bullet that had wounded him in the crown of the image there as a sign of thanksgiving for her maternal protection. He said that one hand pulled the trigger and another hand guided the bullet. It is indeed amazing to note how the bullet was able to pass through his body in very sensitive areas without hitting any vital organs. Nearly 20 years would pass before the Pope would publish the secret. There was a certain effort to publish it in 1984, and another current wanted to reveal the secret on a May 13th in commemoration of the anniversary of the first apparition. As Russia was specifically mentioned in the first parts of the message, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 led to fresh speculation. The angel's message asking for penance in order to avoid earthly catastrophes should be taken to heart. The message of Fatima is consistent with the message revealed in the third secret. Prayer and devotion to the Blessed Virgin should be coupled with penance. Mary can avert disasters because of her special relationship with her son. The third secret is often associated with the assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II. He is thus identified as the bishop in white seen by the children. But the prophecy seems to be much greater than this. Perhaps the deeper lesson is that prayer and penance need to be practiced as the best possible protection against a general apostasy. Apostasy is the sin of denying the faith, and what was once a manner of escaping death from persecution has become almost a fad in many Western countries. It seems popular or cool to be unchurched and unaffiliated to organized religion. Curiously, the rise in apostasy has not ended the era of martyrs. For the 20th century has witnessed, on the contrary, a multiplication of martyrs, both clergy and laity. Russia itself proved to be a country rich in martyrs and persecution of the Christianity. The exhortation of the Blessed Virgin to prayer and penance has not been heeded sufficiently, and thus she has not been able to intervene as she would have liked. The conversion of Russia is still lacking. That's the heart of the question for people in the Fatima Challenge movement. They argue that the third secret of Fatima was a prophecy so traumatic and dire that several popes decided not to make it known to the faithful. And yet the text published in 2000 contained little more than an allegory about the Church's past struggles with 20th century ideologies. They say there's good reason to believe the third secret wasn't just about the Church battling outside forces, but about Satan working in the Church at the highest levels. Some have deduced that the secret foresaw the changes of the Second Vatican Council, especially in liturgy and ecumenical dialogue, as part of the great apostasy that church leaders refuse to acknowledge. Most recently, several of these die-hard Fatimists, as a Vatican official once described them, have suggested that the priestly sex abuse crisis in the Church is a clear sign of the crisis of faith and pastoral negligence prophesied, they say, by Mary at Fatima. The conference took place a few days before Pope Benedict XVI's visit to Fatima, and organizers went out of their way to invite the Pope and Vatican officials. None showed up. The Pope's Vatican aides consider the Fatimists a fringe element that is best ignored. Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone, the Vatican Secretary of State, has said one of the reasons the third secret was made public in 2000 was that people were spreading absurd theses about catastrophic events or heresy at the top levels of the Church. Cardinal Bertone, who was personally involved in the publication of the third secret, said he was puzzled that some still think the Vatican is hiding something. In 2006, an Italian journalist wrote a book titled The Fourth Secret of Fatima that laid out a Vatican conspiracy theory, prompting a new round of publicity. In 2007, Cardinal Bertone wrote his own book, The Last Visionary of Fatima, which reiterated the official version of the Fatima messages and secrets, and was based, he said, on long conversations with Carmelite sister Lucia dos Santos, the last of the visionaries to die. In TV appearances, the cardinal strongly denied theories of a Vatican cover-up. Pope Benedict was also personally involved in publishing the third secret. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the Vatican's top doctrinal official, presented the text of the secret to the press and wrote a lengthy commentary about it. That news conference on June 26, 2000, is still memorable for Vatican journalists. The stage was set for the disclosure of a text that for decades was thought to be too disturbing to reveal, but instead, Cardinal Ratzinger began by deflating expectations and announcing that there was nothing apocalyptic. No great mystery is revealed, nor is the future unveiled, he said. He went on to give a theological framework to the apparitions and messages of Fatima, insisting that in the Church's tradition, prophecy is not like a film preview, but more like offering signs that can be useful for Christians. Cardinal Ratzinger said that was how to understand the third secret's vision of a bishop in white, who struggles up a hill amid corpses of slain martyrs, and then falls dead after being shot by soldiers. Whether this bishop symbolized Pope John Paul II, who was shot and wounded on May 13, 1981, or a convergence of several 20th century pontiffs who helped the Church ward off the dangers, it doesn't mean someone must be killed, the cardinal said. That explanation still sticks in the craw of Fatimists, who say it deliberately removes the vision's apocalyptic scenario and lulls the faithful into a false sense of security. The Vatican's version, they say, suggests these problems are behind the Church, when in their view, the worst is yet to come. Father Nicholas Gruner, a Canadian priest who founded the Fatima Crusader magazine, has long maintained that Russia has yet to be consecrated to Mary, following the instructions of Our Lady of Fatima. Father Gruner said, "We haven't had the conversion of Russia by any stretch of the imagination, not militarily, not morally. It's the largest abortion capital of the world. There's just no sign of conversion in any sense." That's another issue the Vatican is tired of dealing with. Church officials say Pope John Paul II in 1984 led the world's bishops in the consecration of Russia and the world. The late Sister Lucia, one of the 3 Portuguese children who saw Mary in 1917 and the one who received the instructions for the consecration, had said that it was properly performed. The Fatima messages are not dogma, and the Church does not impose belief or any single interpretation. That seems to ensure that the Fatimists will continue to broadcast their theories to whoever will listen. In Fatima, Mary asked the shepherd children to pray for the Holy Father. Her message would be difficult for him, but also a source of consolation and strength. What is clear about the secret is that it is a call to prayer for bishops, and especially the Pope. The Church of the 20th and now 21st century is a church that faces persecution and needs the protection of prayer and Mary's mantle. Our Lady of Fatima, pray for us. Secret is still a secret. Over years after the Vatican divulged one of the Church's best-kept secrets, the third part of Fatima's message, many people are still not satisfied with that explanation. They suspect that the Vatican is still hiding a piece needed to complete the true secret. Many people, including Italian journalist Antonio Socchi, accused the Vatican of not releasing the full text of the secret, citing various inconsistencies between what was released and what had been said previously about the secret. Most importantly, a rumor surfaced that Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, also the future Pope Benedict XVI, had privately confessed to his friend Father Ingo Dollinger that the Vatican had withheld a section that warned of a bad council and a bad mass. Combined with the fact that Lucia had asked for the secret to be released by 1960, this seemed to be a reference to the Second Vatican Council and the subsequent liturgical reforms that remain controversial for many traditionalists. The evidence points to only one conclusion: that something has to be missing, said Christopher Ferrara, a U.S. attorney and Catholic commentator who spoke at the conference. Ferrara pointed to what he described as a series of incongruities and inconsistencies in the Vatican's version. Among people truly familiar with the events at Fatima, he said, only a minority cling steadfastly to the notion that an ambiguous vision of a bishop dressed in white outside a half-ruined city is all there is to the third secret. Some argue that the third secret of Fatima was a prophecy so traumatic and dire that several popes decided not to make it known to the faithful, and yet the text published in 2000 contained little more than an allegory about the Church's past struggles with 20th century ideologies. They say there's good reason to believe the third secret wasn't just about the Church battling outside forces, but about Satan working in the Church at the highest levels. Some have deduced that the secret foresaw the changes of the Second Vatican Council, especially in liturgy and ecumenical dialogue, as part of the great apostasy that church leaders refuse to acknowledge. Sounds so scary, right? It is very likely that the third secret of Fatima does not merely refer to the Pope in white, who was later believed to be Pope John Paul II fulfilling the prophecy, but points to a broader picture, which is the crisis of faith and pastoral negligence prophesied. You know, the third secret concerns the infallible definitions of the faith, and that definitions, by their very nature, have to say what the truth is, and therefore, by strict logical implication, what the error is, and that the error is condemned. If a person stubbornly holds on to a condemned error after he has been informed of the infallible truth, then he cannot be saved, unless he repents before he dies. And so it is our duty to witness to the truths of our faith and to protect the little ones from errors against the faith by defending the faith in public. That's why the Church anathematizes those errors and those clergy and laity who stubbornly hold on to them. We know what the third secret is because Pope John Paul II has revealed to us what it is. Pope John Paul II warned us in May 2000 about the dangers to the faith in our day by citing in his sermon, which predicted that 1/3 of the stars of heaven would be taken down to earth by the tail of the dragon, and the Pope indicates to us that the danger is now. Catholic commentaries have traditionally interpreted this passage as referring to 1/3 of the clergy as undermining both the Catholic faith and the salvation of souls by working for the devil. And we also know from other reliable sources, including Cardinal Ratzinger, when he said the third secret refers to the dangers threatening the faith and life of the Christian, and therefore the life of the world. We also know it from Father Malachi Martin, when Our Lady said, "In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved." What do you think it means? It means that the dogma of the faith will not be preserved in various or many other parts of the world because the clergy and faithful are not adhering to the solemn definitions. The third secret concerns the undermining of the Catholic faith throughout Europe and possibly throughout much of the world. If the people adhered to the infallible definitions, they would retain the faith. To safeguard your Catholic faith, you need your own efforts to live a good Catholic life and to read solid Catholic material, to avoid bad books, magazines, TV programs, and to avoid also people who undermine your Catholic faith. But you also need grace. To obtain this grace, you must pray, especially the daily rosary. To avoid being confused, Do not follow the false shepherds and the heretics who claim to speak to a deeper understanding of the gospel. If they followed the infallible definitions of the dogmas of the faithful would judge everything according to what is right and what is wrong, in the light of the gospel and of the infallible definitions that explain the gospel. They would know if something were of the faith or not, and they would know when the other person speaking was in error, no matter what their position and stature in the church was, and they would be able to determine what is wrong, what is against the faith, because the definitions are infallible. That is, they cannot fail. A pope can fail at times. At times, an ecumenical council can fail, a cardinal, a bishop, a priest, or a layperson can fail, but the solemn definitions of the pope alone, or the pope together with an ecumenical council, can never fail. This is what Our Lady of Fatima came to warn us about and to tell us what to do, to preserve our own souls and to preserve as many souls of the people around us as we can. And this is what the third secret is about in a few words. And we're on solid ground. Dollinger and Pope Benedict XVI, Holy See Press Office, issued a response that Pope Benedict XVI declares never to have spoken with Professor Dollinger about Fatima, clearly affirming that the remarks attributed to Professor Dollinger on the matter are pure inventions, absolutely untrue, and he confirms decisively that the publication of the third secret of Fatima is complete. And Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone has said one of the reasons the third secret was made public in 2000 was that people were spreading absurd theses about catastrophic events or heresy at the top levels of the church. Cardinal Bertone, who was personally involved in the publication of the third secret, said he was puzzled that some still think the Vatican is hiding something. In 2006, an Italian journalist wrote a book titled The Fourth Secret of Fatima that laid out a Vatican conspiracy theory, prompting a new round of publicity. In 2007, Cardinal Bertone wrote his own book, The Last Visionary of Fatima, which reiterated the official version of the Fatima messages and secrets, and was based, he said, on long conversations with Carmelite sister Lucia dos Santos, the last of the visionaries to die. In TV appearances, the cardinal strongly denied theories of a Vatican cover-up. Pope Benedict was also personally involved in publishing the third secret. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, the Vatican's top doctrinal official, presented the text of the secret to the press and wrote a lengthy commentary about it. That news conference on June 26, 2000 is still memorable for Vatican journalists. The stage was set for the disclosure of a text that for decades was thought to be too disturbing to reveal. But instead, Cardinal Ratzinger began by deflating expectations and announcing that there was nothing apocalyptic. No great mystery is revealed, nor is the future unveiled, he said. He went on to give a theological framework to the apparitions and messages of Fatima, insisting that in the Church's tradition, prophecy is not like a film preview, but more like offering signs that can be useful for Christians. Cardinal Ratzinger said that was how to understand the third secret's vision of a bishop in white, who struggles up a hill amid corpses of slain martyrs and then falls dead after being shot by soldiers. Whether this bishop symbolized Pope John Paul II, who was shot and wounded on May 13, 1981. Father Nicholas Gruner, a Canadian priest who founded the Fatima Crusader magazine, has long maintained that Russia has yet to be consecrated to Mary following the instructions of Our Lady of Fatima. Father Gruner said, "We haven't had the conversion of Russia by any stretch of the imagination, not militarily, not morally. It's the largest abortion capital of the world. There's just no sign of conversion in any sense." That's another issue the Vatican is tired of dealing with. Church officials say Pope John Paul II in 1984 led the world's bishops in the consecration of Russia and the world. The late Sister Lucia, one of the 3 Portuguese children who saw Mary in 1917 and the one who received the instructions for the consecration, had said that it was properly performed. "But I obey, nevertheless, the will of your excellency, which for me is the expression of the will of our good God. I begin this task then, asking the most holy hearts of Jesus and Mary to deign to bless it, and to make use of this act of obedience to obtain the conversion of poor sinners, for whom Jacinta so generously sacrificed herself. Thinking of her limitations, she added, "I know that Your Excellency does not expect that I write skillfully, because you know my incapacity and insufficiency." Lucia did not realize her natural gift for bringing the truth to life simply, and for painting vivid work pictures in all truth, sincerity, and honesty. With the eye of an artist, she described her humble home in orderly and precise detail, taking readers through it with word photos. Less than 2 weeks after Lucia began the initial memoir, on Christmas Day 1935, she finished it. At the time, it was titled simply Jacinta. Shortly after, a priest working with the bishop suggested he ask Lucia to expand on the history and details of the apparitions. So the bishop shared the request. Lucia started writing more on November 7, 1937, completing the second memoir on November 21st. Included are the recounting of the apparitions of the angels and the revelation of the Immaculate Heart of Mary in the June apparition, plus several other details. With Fatima's Silver Jubilee in 1942 on the horizon, again, the bishop wanted her to write further. This expanded version of what was then known as Jacinta would be the third memoir in time for the Jubilee anniversary. Lucia realized this was the time in this requested third memoir to reveal the first and second secrets of Fatima. Lucia wrote the bishop that, in obedience to his order, the moment has arrived to reply to 2 questions which have often been sent to me, but which I have put off answering until now. In my opinion, it would be pleasing to God and to the Immaculate Heart of Mary that, in the book Jacinta, 1 chapter would be devoted to the subject of hell and another to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Your Excellency will indeed find this opinion rather strange and perhaps inopportune, but it is not my own idea. God Himself will make clear to you that this is a matter that pertains to His glory and to the good of souls. These updates were written in the summer of 1941. After Lucia completed the text, the bishop and a priest working closely on Fatima with him visited her on the Feast of the Holy Rosary on October 7, 1941, and wanted to know even more. She wrote in 2 parts, turning in the first part on November 5th, and the second, completed edition, on December 8th, the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception. Lucia has sketched out a kind of message of Fatima according to the Gospel, or a Gospel according to Fatima, in line with Pope St. John Paul II's words on Fatima, noted Carmelite Father Jesus Castellano Cervera, about calls from the message of Fatima.